Welcome to the Proust Questionnaire.
35 questions giving us insight into what makes creative people tick.
We are so excited to welcome you back to the Proust Questionnaire. Just as a reminder for our listeners, Caroline Weber is Caroline Weber 2020 on Instagram and the author of Proust's Duchess, which was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, an amazing book, and is hard at work on the deadline for a new book, and was also just completing her term as a Cullman Center Fellow at the New York Public Library. So she's definitely been busy, and I have just completed teaching my courses at NYU for this academic year, and I'm quite happy to have spent a lot of time recently editing Oscar Wilde's letters to Lord Alfred Douglas, which are going to come out in a new edition. So both of us have been very busy. But we are really pleased to host today's guest. Calvin Sun is an emergency room physician who's worked during the entire pandemic, during COVID, in New York City hospitals. A very trying and harrowing experience. And he's written about that in something called Covid Diaries, which he will publish as his reflections during this year on what it has meant to be a frontline worker and an emergency physician in the pandemic. But he's also the host of a travel community, of a place to bring people together for smart, intelligent, and sustainable travel that's called Monsoon Diaries. So you can find Monsoon Diaries on Instagram and also on the web. And Calvin, who himself has traveled to 190 countries, is the person who brings together people who want to take trips to understand the world, understand themselves, and change their perspective, which is also what the Proust Questionnaire is about. So follow Calvin on Instagram at Monsoon Diaries or sign up and take a trip with him. He's resuming traveling now, and he really brings together communities of people, like-minded people who want to explore new places. An incredible kind of initiative, I think, and especially when some of us are able to come out of the pandemic restrictions, it's just an amazing place to convene and bring together people. So Calvin, thank you so much for being here today. And we really look forward to having you as our guest on this episode of the Proust Questionnaire. Hi.
Hi.
Calvin, we're really excited to host you on the Proust Questionnaire today.
Thank you for having me. It's excited to be here.
We're really excited. So Caroline and I are here sitting in New York with our neighbor, Calvin Sun, who is a doctor, famous Instagram presence, and a world traveler.
That was an accident. Accidentally famous.
Yeah.
So you are the host or the I guess the person behind Monsoon Diaries.
On Instagram?
On Instagram, and which is a website and a blog and a community and a kind of travel community for people to do sustainable and good travel, right?
I like the sound of that. I actually haven't been able to define it in the last 10 years. And okay. I think I like to hear what other people's definition of it and their impression. It is what I think what people would take out of it, whether they come travel with me or live vicariously. But originally, officially, it was a travel blog on WordPress to let my mom know it's okay while traveling alone.
Nice.
That's so nice.
And I think it morphed into this Forrest Gump-esque community where I'm like traveling alone and people started following along physically, like literally.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And figuratively, I guess, people on my blog, and then Instagram is the latest addition.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful. Like I've been following it vicariously to do your travels. They all look fun, thrilling, a little risky. I'm glad your mom can check in on you all the time. You do crazy things.
And now we can check in too. Yeah, exactly. Just to make sure you're safe.
And you're a doctor, and you are just got a book contract to publish your experience during COVID, right?
Yeah, nothing's been signed yet.
Yep.
Been approached to publish, and we'll see where it leads. But so far, all lights are green. Let's not jinx it.
So that's awesome. No, it's good. Well, once the questionnaire is out, we'll confirm or not, or otherwise people can follow you on Instagram.
Yes.
There's that. Yeah. And we'll start. And Caroline, you want to dive right in?
First question is always an easy one. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Is that the easy one? I feel like that would be the most difficult. I think that the idea of perfect happiness is when you stop thinking about it and you stop chasing it. I think that in my belief, in all intents and purposes, everything that I've known so far, I'm pretty happy. I am happy, but it's not something I think about. Mm-hmm. I think that when I stopped looking for it, happiness found me because I actually chose not to live a life of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a time when someone asked me, would you rather live a life of happiness? I'm like, yes, I do. It's like, no, but you didn't hear the other one. Or would you prefer to live a life of meaning? And I was like, well, in that case, I would choose meaning, thinking and knowing deep down that eventually happiness would find me if I just always endeavor to search for purpose and meaning. And I think that was the case where I think after my childhood, a series of incidents and traumas and whatnot, I decided that, anything can happen. I might as well just run towards the fires, choose discomfort, not try to make my life as happy as possible, but rather try to give my life a sense of meaning. And then, going with the flow, I think now looking back, I'm very happy. But I think it's when I least look for it is when it really chases after me.
That's fantastic.
I love that answer.
I love that too. In a way, that's very. I know, being a medical doctor, you may or may not be a big fan of Marcel Proust, for whom this questionnaire was named. Have you ever read Proust?
Suffering is what makes who we are.
Well, and Proust would agree with you on that. And also, but I mean, his whole novel, I think, in many ways, is In Search of Lost Time. Is a man? It's the story of a man who kind of is looking for something that will make him happy in life. And at the end of the 4,000 pages, and I apologize, this is a spoiler for our audience, but at the end, he figures out what will make his life meaningful, and that's what he then decides to pursue.
Well, that's convenient.
So in a way, it's you're a perfect. There's no requirement of knowing anything about Proust to be on this show, but I love how Proustian your answer is, because he really, I think, does make that distinction. And
we got this amazing answer, and our listeners got sort of the answer to what Proust is all about.
Proust in 5 seconds.
Saved you 4,000 pages.
Nobody has to read it now.
Calvin, what is your greatest fear?
The fear is, fear is a feeling. And it's essentially asking, what's my biggest feeling that inspires that fear? And we can be practical and saying, I'm afraid of insects and eating insects, or I can go, meta and say that I fear of insignificance, which is the truth. We're all insignificant if you really think about it. And that's why we distract ourselves with our daily routine, day-to-day things just to get by, to give our sense of life purpose. If you really think about it, the sense of insignificance is very profound. And I think is that feeling is not so much the matter. It's not the feeling that matters so much as the meaning you assign that feeling, what you do with that feeling. And because of that fear of insignificance, we endeavor to fight for meaning in that insignificance, or fight for significance in that insignificance. Is that irony in which that drives me to do what I do every day, knowing that even though it's inevitably meaningless in the big scheme of the universe, I derive a sense of satisfaction that I'm still fighting for it, no matter how meaningless it is.
Mm-hmm.
That gives my sense of purpose. I think it's like Camus' The Plague, especially what we're going through in COVID. Plagues happen, people die. And it's not about trying to beat a plague or survive anything. It's about just getting to the next step, and just fighting for meaning within meaninglessness. Just even take care of people. I think in the lens of a doctor, I always tell my students and my residents, it's not about saving lives. That's like a bonus. It's about being a guide for people in their worst days of their lives. Every day of my life is everyone else's worst days of their lives, is what I usually say. And, to be a guide, and I guess the guide along the river Styx, just to be, there for them and to understand something that loved ones who are not medical doctors may not be able to guide them through. And I think that's my main purpose as a doctor. I'm not be able to cure everything or fix everything in one day, especially in a 5-minute encounter with a patient in the ER. But I can at least get them to the next step. I think that's what, and I think that all that derives from fear. The fear of not knowing, the fear of not being able to save this person, the fear of letting them down. I think someone asked about fear during COVID. And I had said that, of course I'm afraid going in, but what is that feeling if it doesn't create an action? That fear can make me not go in. I'm per diem. I don't work for anyone, or at least during COVID. I could have just clocked all of my shifts and said I'm not coming in, and not get in trouble as a per diem. But I did the opposite. I filled in for so many unfilled shifts for so many of my colleagues who got sick. And even though I was afraid, but I think it was that fear that instead of preventing me from going to work, which is reasonable, that fear was actually the fuel to get me to go to work. I didn't want to look back on my life and know that that's what I did with that feeling. So my greatest fear is my greatest, I think, asset. Courage can't exist without fear. As in, if there was no fear, then wouldn't be considered courageous. It would just be easy. I did this. Yeah. I'm courageous. Were you scared? No. Then I would do it.
Yeah, across the street. Woohoo! Yeah.
Right. That's not courageous at all. But courageous is when you're scared out of your mind and you do it anyway. And it's not. I'm not saying just apply to everything, but like when you do it, when you realize, look back, you did it despite how scared you are. It's a good test of you were meant to do that.
What is the trait you most deplore in yourself?
What is this? Like my biggest weakness, vanilla ice cream, mint chocolate chip ice cream.
That's good.
Warm pecan pie. It's that, I think. It's just the and I don't want to give a half answer of like the curse is my blessing, blessing is my curse, but it is the falling back on habits that you try to break out of, and then that in turn engenders that self-forgiveness that has to come with every time. I make a commitment to not do something, and what I deplore is that I end up falling back onto that bad habit over and over and over again, whether it is mint chocolate chip ice cream when I said no more, I know exactly what that tastes like, or being a bad consumer when I look at a Three Musketeer bar and I say mint chocolate, no way, and I buy it anyway, and everyone's like, you just had that last week. It's like, yeah, but I forgot what it tasted like. Obviously, I'm a big believer, try everything once, and if you don't like it, do everything twice, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. But I sometimes do the same thing over and over and over again, especially when I'm hungry, just to do things that I promised I never would do. But that also comes in with a grain of not taking myself too seriously and forgiving myself. Yeah. But it's tough, to be able to be like, I promised myself, and that feels I let myself down. But what is life without a little bit of being inherently dissatisfied all the time?
I think that's right. And also, the small comforts. Like, it doesn't seem like you're hurting a lot of people to be eating a little bit of mint chocolate chip ice cream every now and again.
But this was bad. This was like every day. and instead of like, it's like when at the dessert, instead of like ordering one, I order all of them. Okay. I mean, I'm using food as a euphemism. This could be anything. Right. It could be like, taking on too much than you can handle at an emergency rooms or your job, not knowing how to say no. I see. When all the opportunities come to you, you're like, hey, I'll do everything. I'll do all of them, thinking that you can, but really as you grow older, you really need to like prioritize. And this is ironic hearing from me because I have not yet been able to do that.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll have a reunion interview in 10 years, and then you'll tell us how. Yeah. If that has changed. What is the trait that you most deplore in other people?
Entitlement. Period. I didn't have to think about that.
Yeah.
Entitlement.
Which living person do you most admire?
Oh, like everyone. Everyone is like a guest star. I always look at strangers walking across the street and try to create a story behind them. It's very like David Foster Wallace. You get to choose what to worship, and if it doesn't hurt other people, why can't that be true? And I admire the ability for people just to live their daily lives despite all the distractions and noise around them, especially after a year like this, to just keep persisting. And maybe they're just, getting by, existing. And I want to shake them awake. Wake up, you need to travel the world. You need to stop doing your day. Does your life have meaning? Or I can just believe that they are pursuing their meaning. I mean, it's easy to believe that when you're living in New York City, everyone's trying to chase, a dream. Yeah. So you feel that energy. I mean, I'm biased from New York.
Or trying to survive.
Trying to survive.
That's the other part of New York.
Oh, absolutely. That's true.
Living your dream and also trying to survive.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Surviving and thriving. Yeah. To basically the opposite extremes of trying to fill both aspects of it and actually trying to do both. I mean, the previous answer is like, you don't have to just do one and get to the other. Maybe you can do both. And I think New York can, marry those to juxtapose those opposite extremes, which I admire in the everyday man. But I mean, I guess if you want real answer, I've always looked up to my brother, older brother who took care of me, Linus, and he's 14 years older, so kind of a father figure after my father died suddenly when I was 19. He already had his full circle with our father. I did not, so he was much more. I mean, I think there's like a book about when you lose your father at certain ages. If it's when you're much older, you already had that ring, theory. You're like at peace. You already have closure. But at my age in the teens, something was missing. Has been missing, and maybe that's the fuel, that fear, that gives courage. That that lack of father figure creates that just drive to pursue meaning for myself that I didn't get from my father. And my brother has always been that safety net.
Yeah.
What is your greatest extravagance?
Mint chocolate chip ice cream. It depends on how you could consider it. Is extravagance an investment? People would say travel. I spend a lot of money. Well, currently, I mean, back in medical school, I tried to create a way that even though it's 200, it's all relative. I didn't spend a lot of money on traveling back in medical school when I first started traveling. Try to save a lot of money, and I would actually come back having made more money because I would like sublet my apartment or try to take out student loans, which I don't recommend doing. But I really love traveling in that it balanced out all the stresses of medical school. And I think relative to even as cheap as my travel was, where I spent like $10 a day in Southeast Asia or find $300 round trip flights from New York to Hong Kong, relative to my $200,000 in student debt I had as a medical student, that was my biggest extravagance. But I chose to believe that it was an investment in myself. And now looking back 10 years later, since I started traveling, I was 23 now, 34, so 11 years. It has brought back so much dividends. Every interview I do, every shift that I have, whoever I work with, there is something to talk about. Patience that you talk about, cultural competence, and being able to say, I was there. Where are you coming from? I have been there. It's just to be able to make that connection, I think has paid back more than the $200,000 of student loan debt that I still have to pay back.
And we're going to put in the notes also how to get a $300 ticket to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
That's useful too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah! I mean, just yesterday.
We're going to put that in the notes.
As of today, June 22nd, 21st, 2021, round trip flights from New York to Portugal right now. In July is $340.
We're going to put that in the notes.
Round trip,
Yeah.
all inclusive.
Well, let's do a Proust questionnaire in Portugal
That's
on the
right.
beach of Portugal. What is your current state of mind?
Right now, I mean, if you looked into me 3 weeks ago, I was like, in transition, but now I'm like content, at peace, fulfilled.
Great.
Good.
It's a good way to be. What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Overrated virtue. The most overrated virtue would be what is a nice way of saying self-righteous? Trying to be so perfect that you think you're better than that person, but it has good intention. What's the well-intentioned version of self-righteous?
Like conviction.
Yeah,
in a way, maybe like a kind of like an unearned sense of conviction. Or I don't know.
Is it cocky? I mean, I want to say it's cockiness because you generally is a virtue because you are someone that's so good. But have you really touched the burner? Have you really touched the fire to know what it means to have lost everything and bring yourself back up again? Do you really know what it's like to, get yourself out of the ivory tower and, get down and really know what the other person did? And so, you pretty much have been empathetic up to this point, getting to where you are right now, and you've done a really good job, but that doesn't mean your story ends there. And those people who've had reached the, end of their careers or the pinnacle of their careers feel like, I guess, what is it? I think it was a great article. Power corrupts, or having power creates some kind of brain damage.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you have power for long enough, you create brain damage in the way you don't empathize, and that's why so many despots are brilliant when they're trying to gain power, military victories and political victories. But once they have power and they hold on to that power, they make really dumb decisions that lead to their downfall.
Like power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
Like
And
Acton or someone said that.
Yeah.
It's British guys. Those British guys, and they knew about power.
They knew about it. They wrote the book on it.
In the 1880s, they knew about power, right?
Yeah.
Right. On what occasion do you lie?
On what occasion? It's like the movie The Farewell. All right. I think that I think Alain de Botton did a really good thing on
Which is a recent movie about a family lie.
Yes, a white lie in order to keep
for
the greater good.
Yeah, for the greater good.
Yeah, if it doesn't hurt other people.
Yeah.
It's controversial.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it weren't, everyone would be doing it across all cultures.
Right.
But at the same time, it does lend to some credence to why so many people and so many families do it. I think Alain de Botton did something really good about the philosopher who talked about relationships, in that should you tell your partner everything, the whole truth? And not necessarily, because sometimes that could be seen as a selfish gesture to
Yeah.
absolve yourself of guilt instead of protecting the person that you love. And that may warrant a lie or obviation of truth from the person that is supposed to be the love of your life and supposed to tell everything. And that completely upended my worldview on a life partner, but it makes so much sense, especially in the context of entertainment, farewell. As a movie.
What do you most dislike about your appearance?
That I like my appearance and dislike that at the same time.
Oh, okay. You dislike that you like your appearance?
I dislike that I'm not at a good place with how I look, and I
Just be fine with it.
Yeah.
Way older than you are, Calvin. Just stay with it
enjoy
for a
it while
moment.
you can.
It may change.
I'm very grateful for it, but also like it does. I'm like, oh no, I'm getting cocky. Oh, man,
we don't have you on in 10 years and ask you that question.
Yeah, the shirt comes off. Yeah.
Okay.
We don't do that anymore.
Listeners, our clothes are all on. Uli and I, once upon a time, we might have enjoyed being seen that way, but not now.
Which living person do you most despise?
Who has the most sense of entitlement in the world right now? I mean, I don't want to give away my politics, but it's kind of obvious.
Okay.
But the idea, I don't even despise those kind of people. It's just, I don't care for them. Can I define despise like that? Like they are not worth a modicum of my care or energy in the world. I just don't care. You know? And I can just say that's despise. It's great. I don't want to give them any hate because hate suggests that I actually love them. Right. You know, I don't want that.
Yeah, you're giving them some kind of energy that.
So despise is like I don't care for you.
Right.
I'm very indifferent to them.
Yeah. Okay. And Uli and I always apologize in this day and age that these questions, which date back to the last quarter of the 19th century, are so gendered. But here it goes. Part one of the two-part gendered question. What is the quality that you most like in a man?
The fact that they are not fragile enough to admit their vulnerabilities. They're man enough to admit that they're wrong. They're man enough to admit they don't know everything. They're man enough to cry. And they're man enough to basically step back and let a woman, in this socialization of you know, where the time of this podcast being recorded, is letting a woman take charge.
What is the quality you most like in a woman?
Understanding that gender has been socialized and they will not let a lifetime of being told what to do or socialized to be based on their gender get in the way of actual decision making if it benefits them. So basically going against the entirety of society and then making a decision for herself, knowing that it's moving things forward.
That's great.
I try to tell my students this. It's kind of a very short, complicated statement. I say biology is not destiny.
Yes.
But they have to really take that apart and think about it, because I believe biology is true. Destiny is fated in some ways, but it opens that up, not to assume what you've been assigned to will actually confine you.
And biology can be changed too. Biology can evolve. You're changing it right now. And if that's that's possible, then you can change socialization.
Which words or phrases do you most overuse?
An exclamation point as the punctuation. Semicolons. I don't think semicolons. I love semicolons. I love semicolons. I think I do overuse it because I did do 2 semicolons in a sentence one time in a blog post, and I'm like, I like it. Can I make this?
I'm feeling cocky about that too.
Can I make this a new literary thing? Double semicolons, but I hate the exclamation point, and I hate the word really. No, not really. I hate adverbs. Try to avoid them. But what's the word that I can't stand using and I find myself using over and over again? Amazing.
Amazing.
I hate that word. I say it all the time. That was so amazing. That was the most. And when someone does it, I'm like, just use a different word.
Right. Amazing. I overuse that too. And you're right. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
No, it doesn't.
I use that word too.
Yeah. Oh my God, amazing. It's so amazing. I probably already said it 10 times on this podcast. So
I think it is an expression. Amazing. That's fine. But like to describe something.
Right. No, exactly. You want to be precise.
Yeah.
Yeah, like something, that's what words are for. And so why should we fall back on the cheap one that doesn't...
Amazing is our exclamation point now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There, I used an adverb. Sorry about that, because I don't like them either and I overuse them. What or who is the greatest love of your life?
I would like to believe that the partner I'm with is the greatest love of my life for putting up with so much crap. I mean, I have to say that at the risk of sounding egotistical and cocky, you should be your greatest love of your life, yourself. because if you can't reach yourself and your inner soul and treat yourself as the love of your life, to be comfortable being alone, then you're not ready to meet your other partner. Or other
So
half
Oscar
of your life.
Wilde of you.
Oh, really?
He
What
said
is it?
something like, falling in love with yourself is the beginning of a lifelong romance.
Long-
Yeah, it's the beginning of a lifelong romance.
Yeah.
He probably said narcissism. It's the beginning of a
He was a
lifelong
little narcissistic,
romance.
and I think maybe
And he felt it was deeply entertaining also.
Yes.
Because you can always discover new things.
as long as you can laugh at yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
right.
don't hope my narcissism isn't bleeding through this podcast. I'm self-aware of my narcissism, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but
I do.
Oscar Wilde is funny because he's the master of irony.
Yeah.
He knew that loving yourself will be greatly disappointing
Yes.
also so many
Yes.
times. Like he
Yeah.
said, there was no
Well, what is love
guarantee.
without disappointment? Then it wouldn't be love in the first place.
Yeah,
You
it's
need
like
that.
your thing about courage versus,
Yeah.
it's gotta hurt a little.
When and where were you happiest?
Right now. I mean, why not? Why not right now? Look at the beautiful view, and your this interview is literally a 3-minute walk from me. How convenient!
Exactly.
Of all the times to think about that, like what are the odds?
And we're
you know.
sitting here without masks.
In
And I'm
Uli's
just
apartment.
being
So many
grateful every
things,
day.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. We hope the technology works.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not sure if the technology works. We're hoping so.
But is that a non-answer? I'm hoping I'm not
No,
giving
it's a
an
good
answer.
answer.
Okay.
Yeah,
No,
it's,
it's a
a
great
very,
answer.
it's a very deep answer.
Yeah.
Probably no
Well-
deeper answer than that.
Also,
And
the
right
time,
now,
maybe the
it's-
time I've traveled for the first time too.
Yeah.
Which talent would you most like to have?
Oh man, the ability to speak. Being pretty much a linguistics major, being able to speak every language, because that way you can understand people so well. Flip in and out. No one can talk behind your back.
Yeah.
That's a bonus.
That's a bonus.
Yeah.
But seriously, like once you learn a language, you get to understand why people think the way they do.
Yeah.
You know, even the way you say you're welcome in different languages, or thank you. You know, there's like any expectations. Another one is having literally no expectations. I think that, to go back to the first question, what is happiness, is to like not have any expectations, just to be grateful for every waking moment. And that's when happiness is like, all right, I can't take it anymore.
Mhm.
I choose you because you literally have no expectations. Because what is the matter with disappointment? Expectations.
That's great.
I can't take it anymore.
I'm gonna get an extension cord,
Sure.
but just giving you one.
If you could change one thing about yourself, Calvin, what would it be?
I wouldn't. I don't know I wouldn't change anything about myself. I wish I had a helicopter.
Yeah. Well, and your
I
current
would-
state of not having a helicopter is something you would then like to change.
Yeah, if only I had a helicopter, I could travel anywhere I want to get to any airport, and I could avoid New York City traffic.
Yeah, that's the big thing about. I often feel envious when I drive past the heliport on the
Yeah.
river and here in the city, and you see like gridlock in the cars and just the helicopters.
Yeah. Oh, it must be nice. No, I mean that in jest though. I don't want. I feel. Maybe that's the thing I would change myself. I want to be less materially connected.
Mhm.
I would like to be less glued to screens, like technology.
Mm.
I understand its significance. I'm very good at it. And I'm not saying I want to completely get rid of them. I just want to be a little less. And
Yeah.
I think I'm a little too attached to our two screens.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
And I'm still alive. that I didn't get COVID.
Yeah, seriously.
wow,
You
All
of
the
all
times I've
people-
experienced, like all these patients that coughed in my face and people died around me. I think my greatest achievement is literally just waking up every day. It's like, really? Not me? Not yet? But isn't that PTSD though too? Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I still have it. And then like, I don't have it. Oh, thank God. And then like that just added up. You know, it's like that scene from The Dark Knight where like the Joker wants to blow up both of the fairies
Mhm.
and it creates that human experiment. Is
Mhm.
that person? I don't know. So it was very
Yes.
philosophical when there's like who, they both decide not to, but it goes past the deadline, and they're just like looking at each other. And they're like, "Really? we're still alive?" And it's
There's
that.
two fairies.
There are two
People know there is a device on one of them, and they have to decide which one to go on, and then they don't know which one is going to explode.
They each have each other's keys to blow up each other's boat.
So they could blow up the other boat and save themselves.
Yes, they could
That's
blow up them,
the-
save themselves, and they don't blow up by a certain time. They'll both boats will blow up.
Yeah,
Very-
it's terrible.
Mhm.
It's also so anti-philosophical. It's
It
just
is, yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
It's just
It's
an
a human-
impossible choice and all
Yeah,
that. It's
yeah.
also sadism. It's all. It's
Yeah.
a good. But
But it doesn't happen.
But what you just said, that every day you thought you're still here
Yeah.
during this last
Yeah.
year.
It's
That's
just the
intense.
impossible happen.
That's intense.
Yeah. I think that's in the movie they neither blows up, which is great. It goes against the whole. It really obliterates the whole philosophical argument. And then for me to logically believe to come back and not having had it.
Wow,
that is
My grandfather died of COVID. He never left the apartment. Why him? Like, it's like.
No, it's terrible. Yeah, no, it's terrible what's happened. But
why me?
Yeah.
And therefore, why can't I believe? And that's why I'm the happiest now. Like, why can't I believe that there's some sense of meaning or purpose? And maybe not, but that's what I choose to believe in.
If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what or who would it be?
I would come back as my own self, my son. I don't know, my child, my daughter, a cat.
Mm-hmm. Your cat?
Yeah, my cat. Just being in a position where I can be equally wondrous about the world, and hopefully in the future. I don't want to repeat. I don't want to repeat.
You already know it all.
I already know it all. I want something sometime in the future, and someone that can engender some kind of either wonder in their own lives or change and wonder for others. If you believe in this karmic principle.
Yeah.
Where would you most like to live?
I live in New York City.
Yeah.
I traveled to 147 UN, 190 countries and territories in the last 10 years looking for another place to live.
That's unreal.
I have stayed in New York City equivalents.
No shade to those 190 territories in other countries.
Love them all.
Love them all. But
you choose New York.
I just haven't. Yeah, 1 to 2 days back in New York just hits that thing in the way that other countries have done for me entire months.
What is it, do you think?
It's that energy and the heterogeneity.
Yeah.
The heterogeneity of just having so many different groups of people come together and make a beautiful mess work.
And they're somehow linked, the energy and the diversity or heterogeneity, right?
Yeah. And not everyone's aware of it. Not everyone is able to handle it. But it's that linkage is that it pervades the air that if you're an empath or you're sensitive to certain energies, you will know it. I get it when other people don't get it or don't like it. It's not for everyone. But I haven't been able to find that elsewhere in other cosmopolitan cities. They're more like, no offense to DC, but everyone's in transition there. It's a different kind of energy. Great energy in different ways, but it's transition. No one's there just to like, I'm going to live in DC for the rest of my life. There's some people who do that, but it's not in the same way as like, I'm going to try to make New York, or maybe Paris for some people, but.
I like New York because we know what that is, but you can't get too excited because it's also so messy and annoying and gets in your way. So we don't think, oh, it's so fantastic.
You can't feel super smug about living here.
Exactly. So I don't feel like I'm not putting anybody else down. I can understand why people prefer other cities or places. There's a lot of stuff here in this chaos that...
I agree, totally. Yeah. There are plenty of amazing... you see, look at me using the word amazing.
Okay.
I almost used it just...
So many other great cities like New York, but New York as a New Yorker... It's still that feeling. Who knows? I might be.
What is your most treasured possession?
My blog and my memories. My memories essentially what I wanted to say, but like to have it in my hand, to be able to look at my blog. And I think if you extrapolate that, my entire diary collection. I have kept a diary since I was 6.
Really?
Yes. It's just something that my dad told me to do, and I was like, sure.
And you've kept it up.
Yeah, it was
That's great.
It was like a little lock key thing with a picture of a cat on the piano. My diary when I was 6, all the way up to.
Okay, if you get your publish your book, we have an idea for a cover.
Cat on the piano. Yeah.
It's literally like Flowers for Algernon, where you just see me evolve over time. And then
it's so cute.
Black and white marble notebooks up until 10th grade, and then Zanga, which is still online.
Oh.
My Zanga is still up. That's from 10th grade up to 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So 7 years in Zanga, and then 2010 onwards is the Monsoon Diaries.
Okay, well.
That's also neat that that's something that your dad encouraged you to do. You talked about losing him when you were too young. I mean, losing him at 19, you lose a lot, but it's kind of nice that that's a legacy left to you. It's something he did during the divorce he had with my brother's mother. Okay. He kept diaries, and then it was meant to be written for my brother to read. Wow. But at his funeral, after his funeral, cleaning it out, I ended up reading them. My brother never knew about it. I got to see a side of him, and I was like, "This is why." I mean, by then I already been keeping a diary, but I was still young. I was 19. I wasn't in that nostalgic mood. I was learning about nostalgia and Sadaji and trying to feel like, what does it all mean? But now, as a 34-year-old looking back, or like the past year in COVID, I can just go back in time.
and reread them. Or I would wake up and I was like, what was that feeling I miss?
I'm really interested in reading your book because I do feel this last year it's very strange for me to reconstruct to myself the whole year. I get confused. What was April? What was September? What did I do then? Oh, I wasn't doing anything like this.
When were we washing the groceries? When did we stop doing that? When did we stop washing the doorknobs obsessively, or worry about what germs were going to be on my grocery?
These weird behaviors and information, and I know punctuation of when I heard about people, what happened to them. But then they're missing like weeks. What were they doing?
Gone. That's why memory exists. Why do we forget things? So that we don't have to relive trauma over and over and over again. I think that we've been evolved to where like we're supposed to purposely forget things, otherwise we can't move forward. But that was a very traumatic time in our life, and I think our brain wants us to forget it because they want us to rebuild and move on. But we're also destined to repeat our mistakes over and over again. We don't have that living history. That's why we keep that.
Yeah. What do you regard as the lowest depth of misery?
Lowest depth of misery is I think there are two ways that's coming to me right now that you can really hit rock bottom. One where you're so overwhelmed with external influences pulling you in so many different directions that you forget who you are, that you become numb and indifferent. And then you just exist instead of to live. So let's say you have just so much on your plate where you're trying to take care of others, whether it's a job or friends or people who need things from you for good intentions, that you forget what you need and you just glide by until it just builds up until you're like one step away from total just collapsing, just that straw that broke the camel's back. And the other one is just having, the other one is the flip side, actually, the complete opposite extreme. People who quit their jobs completely, all their jobs, and like, I'm gonna travel the world and work on my next big project. And because they have nothing to work on, they literally just quit everything and have all the savings and everything. They're financially fine. And then lying in bed and they're just like, what do I do? And it's this overwhelming feeling of dread. It's like, I can do anything and none of it matters. Because now in my mind, I can think about the universe. I can think about the galaxies because there's nothing to do tomorrow, the day after. There's no coffee. There's not even a coffee shop. That's why people who are successful sabbaticals, I find, are the ones who like still have a little job in a coffee shop or in the library. Something small every day to like get them by. Yeah. Someone who just quits everything without a guide. There's no guide. Like, this is how you do sabbatical. They'll just think they'll quit everything. Yeah. And then just lie in bed, like paralyzed.
But it's interesting because so many people, like Carolyn and I teach, and so many people, they say, oh, I want to get there. I want to do all this. And then once I'm there, I'm free to do nothing. Yeah. And you kind of think, you very carefully try to listen to them and say, well, what is it that you want? And they feel they have to accomplish all these things, make enough money, save up, and then they can retire early. But they don't really know what that actually is. Yeah, it's just getting out of the rat race. I understand that.
You took the words out of my mouth. That's the rat race, is the death of misery.
But once you're out of it, they know that they're falling maybe into nothingness. Yeah. They don't fall into meaning.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Heidegger thing about having projects, right? In order to separate yourself from the void.
Is that what he said?
Right? It's
interesting.
Projects.
You have to have projects. Like, projects are the thing that separates you from the kind of radical nihilism of just what you were talking about before, the sense of total meaninglessness and not having
the movie Memento. He, at the end of the movie, this Christopher Nolan thing, he purposely at the end, spoiler alert, creates a lie. It's a movie about a guy with short-term memory loss trying to find out who murdered his wife. And when he finds out the truth, he actually creates a lie, pointing it to an innocent person, so that he can give himself meaning again. Wow. Before he forgets that he made it up.
Yeah.
What is your favorite occupation? I think it means job.
Yeah.
Like profession.
Bartender. Which I'm doing now. Oh. I feel like as an ER doctor, you're a bartender. That's what I used for my interview. And the guy interviewing me was like, that was the best damn answer to the question. And what I mean by that is,
I'm trying to picture.
I'm trying to understand
ER doctor.
Well, think about it.
Like, you're behind. Like, you're drunk. Go home.
Okay, similar patients, right? Similar patient population.
In New York City,
yeah. You're behind a row of computers, just like a bar. Whoever steps behind the row of computers, or your ER thing, you get security. You can't step behind the bar. You got to move as fast as possible to take care of as many people as possible. Make them love you in the 5 minutes you have them, so that they don't have to, order another drink. You take care of them.
They have to leave you a big tip.
Tipping allowed
in your ER?
Instead of a tip, it would be Press-Ganey scores.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's
and
what
they also want something.
Everyone
really
they all want, and they all want to be first.
You got to meet them where they are. And you can't move too quickly because everyone feels like you're not. Then people feel like you're not paying attention to them. You can't move too slowly because there's so many other customers and other patients waiting for you. And then you got to take care of the same population: the down and out, the depressed, the people who close the bars. Sometimes they come to the bars and they go to the ER.
People who feel probably very angry that they're there.
Yeah,
I'm sure you deal with that. Like, I don't want to be. No one wants to be in the ER. Really. Right. I mean, that might be not true. There might be some people do it. That's right. Yeah.
And then the boss of the ER. That's where my job now. I'm the bar manager. I just go around like, hey, how you liking my ER? Give this guy a Tylenol on the house before he goes. He's fine. This
has forever changed my view of the ER. And of
I want to go to your ER. Which one is your ER? Where are you?
I work at the majority of hospital systems in New York City.
I'm knocking on
wood. We can find you everywhere.
I'll see Calvin in a real bar.
That's a riot.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. One of my favorite jobs, and I told this in my. I think they would can me. They're just like, oh, I'm done. Like I've been found.
So
and the guy
you mean when you were interviewing for a job in an ER?
The program director of my residency program was like, that was the best damn answer to the question I ever heard. Like, you actually understand. It's customer service.
Yeah.
And it's the same skill set. And I'm the best job in the world. You know, what I do my travel blog, I lead people around the world. You know, that's kind of just like being able to take care of a bunch of people. You know, that I just met a bunch of strangers. It's a little longer than a night at a bar, but I never see them again. And that's the thing. It's like, how do you make the time you have with a stranger totally worth it? That they'll never forget you. That you don't have to see them again, but you know that you profoundly changed their lives. A bartender does that. An ER doctor does that.
What is your most marked characteristic?
Personally, is that I'm decisive and reliable. I never flake. I'm always a man of my word. People know, who are listening to this, whoever texted me anything or emailed me, as long as they weren't being rude, I will always reply back. I always owe them that respect. I've never left a message unreplied to, unless they've been in control.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's inspiring, but also humbling because that's
I have that. Maybe that's to go back on that. I mean, maybe that is something I should despise most about myself. I can't just let things go. I have to respond to everything. I mean, I know when to establish boundaries. If you're being rude or you're being in control or just not being taken seriously, then I can cut that off. Sure. But more often than not, with every friend, with every plans, I've never actually followed. I've rain checked twice in my life. Maybe I can count. I know that's two times. That was literally because of weather and a missed
monsoon.
Monsoon, right? Missed flight. Other people would say that I'm opinionated and decisive.
Okay.
Just like he just does it and doesn't look back. That's not true. There's a lot of thought given to it.
What do you most value in your friends?
I love the fact that I have created this. I am so grateful for the fact that the universe has led me to a Jedi Council of friends. That my friends are all people that I won't say trialed, but they've been through the gauntlet and they've still stuck there, been there for me. I think the equivalent is having a former partner that, I'm not saying this is what I have, but it's kind of similar to that vibes of a former partner that knows everything about you and you've been to hell and back. And then some time has passed, and if you come to each other's lives and you just love each other without expectations, and they know everything about you without the expectation of the baggage that comes with a stranger that may be romantic. So it's the kind of thing like where all my friends have been there, where we've traveled together, we've had some conflict together, we set expectations and then obliterated them, and they still are there, going to be there for me. And the remarkable thing is that they're not all friends with one another; they're all in disparate friend groups of their own. That's why I call it Jedi Council. It's not like we are, a big happy family. It's like they have their own friends, and I'm just myself, and I can rely on them for different things, and they can rely on me for whatever place I can fill.
That's great. Who are your favorite writers?
I was a big fan. I haven't read in a while, but James Joyce.
Sure. Oh, it was Bloomsday a few days ago.
Right.
Oh yeah. They're Dead. One of my favorite short stories.
Wow.
And I think Kurt Vonnegut, and the comic books of The Watchmen, and sometimes Frank Miller's the style in which they tell stories also is fascinating. I mean, it helps with the graphics, but I call them graphic novels, not comics. But it's the narratives in which they project images. I'm a very visual person, that I consider that great writing as well.
Who is your hero in fiction? Like a fictional character.
Do I want to say Batman because I just touched upon him, but that's too easy of an answer.
I don't think anyone said that actually thus far, and he's a good one. Well, why Batman? Or would you prefer?
Well, I think it's not not Batman per se. It's the Batman Iron Man types, conflicted duality. We root for Tony Stark more, or he's more beloved in my opinion than Captain America. Right? Captain America has that, what we just talked about earlier in the earlier question, self-righteousness. Yeah. He was like, oh my God, it's infuriating, it's insufferable, and there has to be something else. You got to let up something. Whereas Tony Stark, with all his demons, embraces the actual what it means to be human, and knowing that dark side he could stay dark, but he chooses, despite everything that points otherwise. And that's for fighting for meaning within meaninglessness. He can be totally nihilistic because he realizes nothing means anything, and he could do whatever he wants to get away with it. But he chooses still to fight for meaning, even though that's the harder thing to do. Same with Batman. Same with those kind of hero archetypes. I guess you call them anti-heroes. I mean,
you could.
It's not true that. I'm not
being anti-hero.
This is not Raskolnikov. I'm not saying like murdering people is good.
I think anti-hero has to have like a negative.
Yeah, but I don't know. Batman's pretty dark.
Yeah,
and that whole, and I think now
he beats up people.
And the politics of it today too, of like the super rich guy who gets waited on by an old white guy. I mean, there's a lot that
conflicted.
Yeah, and not lovable.
But what I admire is the self-awareness that despite all that privilege and where you come from, you still fight for what is right. The villain hero-ish, the father in Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One.
I haven't seen that one.
I subscribe to that kind of politics where he is the guy who designed the Death Star, which is a super weapon that destroys planets. However, he is also the same person, the engineer, who installs that really easy weakness that allows the Rebel Alliance to destroy the Death Star so quickly.
He's a realist, not an idealist.
Well, he's actually fighting for the Rebel Alliance, but he's designing Death Star because I guess as well, but everyone wants to kill him. Yeah. The Empire is not quite sure about him, but he's the only one who designed a super weapon for them, so he does it. Not great. But he also installs the weakness in the thing to completely destroy it for the Rebel Alliance. But the Rebel Alliance doesn't know this, and they're all trying to kill him.
He puts the snake in the garden.
And then with the weight on his shoulders and being to do what is right despite all that privilege, I think is admirable. Yeah, because that's what it means to be human.
Which historical figure do you most identify with?
Judas and the Black Messiah. That activist.
Oh, yeah. It's
he was able to consolidate.
Have you seen it yet?
No.
It's very good. It's Judas and the Black Messiah. So it's a kind of black activist who's betrayed.
Yeah, Fred Hampton.
Who's betrayed by a fellow activist who sells him out to the FBI. And it's this relationship between these two people. It's a really kind of gripping and devastating story in a way.
I really wanted to see it.
It's very good. I saw it on the airplane on the way back, and I was jet lagged, which is why I don't remember everything. But I should know better about this history. Yeah. Because this is, I just also saw Chicago trials.
Chicago 7.
It's Chicago 7, which is also related to that era. Fred Hampton was the lawyer for one of the
defendants in that trial,
until he got shot, until he was murdered. So for Fred Hampton, I think I admire. I don't identify with him in the way that I wish I could.
Yeah.
He sought actively to consolidate different groups together and for the united good. He saw that the dangers of a circular firing squad of progressive politics. I'm more kind of, I'll let it happen if it's meant to be. I'm not going to go run for mayor or go for politics. I'm not really into that. But if somebody forces it in, my hand, it's like, like how it happened with COVID. Like I was just doing my job, but I had a unique perspective of saying what was going on, and people just really wanted to know, and I was happy to do it. But I didn't contact anyone. Just hey, you should know what's going on, because I didn't know any better and what was valuable. I just was saying what I felt was right on my own platform. And whoever wanted to pick it up would listen. Fred Hampton actually went out there. I wish I admired that quality. But I understand, I identify with the idea that me having my work in progressive politics so far before I kind of burnt out a little bit. I'm still involved. Is that I always was able to see beyond the arguments. I see what this this is, you're arguing because that's what they want you to do. And we're still seeing that now, which activism is right, which is why nothing's getting done in terms of progressive politics, is that everyone has their own idea of what's right, where he was able to say, it doesn't matter. So we have to work together, because what they want us to do is to fight each other. Like a coalition of really unlikely people. That's what you're saying. Yeah. And I was really good. I did that a lot in undergrad and grad and my nonprofit to create coalition building.
Yeah.
That was something that I had a zest for. But
I think it's a huge challenge because it requires solidarity across groups who don't see that they even have the same interest, and you can't just put an overarching interest on top of them and say you're all pursuing the same ideal.
Right.
That also it's compromise within the organization. There's a woman, I think her name is Sarah Schulman, who just wrote a history of ACT UP, basically an AIDS activism. And she told me this one interesting thing. She said, we would meet on Mondays and people would say, let's go and protest at the mayor's house, and let's go in the cathedral and sit and lay down and do this and do that. And she said, and no one could object if one group wanted to do this, another group wanted to do something else, and they totally disagreed on the strategies. Everybody went ahead and did it for the week. She said, we have to do something. Talking about what is the best thing is wasting time.
Yeah.
And it was a coalition of people who couldn't see eye to eye at all on many things, but action at the end of the meeting, every Monday, everybody to go out and go, you guys do this for the week, come back next week.
Yeah.
And she said, there was no agreement.
Yeah.
And she said it was really pragmatic in a way. We just had to get something done.
Just do it. No, I agree.
Arguing about what's the best thing was useless.
Well, I always feel like parliamentary democracy it runs on that principle, right? That I always am ashamed of how little I understand of how that works in, France or Denmark or Germany. Like, oh, the Green Party is actually allying with the.
Right.
It's so fascinating to me because we live obviously in America in this bitterly and increasingly dysfunctionally bipartisan environment, and I always love thinking about kind of I doubt we'll ever get to change our political system that dramatically, but it always seems to me kind of inspiring that you can have these sort of fractured interest groups but who form coalitions.
It's almost
get things
inconceivable for Americans to think like you have some kind of leftist environmental party and the Christian conservatives in alliance and running a government.
And they might actually have to do something together or decide to do something together.
Well, I mean, we've seen it with the vaccine, anti-vaccine movement, where the left is with the left and the most conservative are actually working together.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we're seeing an evolution beyond winner-take-all politics. And we just had ranked choice voting as of yesterday in New York. And that requires you to work together. Oh, you vote for me, put her as second, or put me as second, you're going to vote for her. Yeah. And that actually leads to kind of campaigning where people working together instead of fighting against. I mean, Eric Adams was an exception where he kind of just like went off on that. But it does, the winner takes all environment would take two people with very similar progressive movement, maybe a little different, to fight against each other rather than working together. Right. So I think there is an evolution beyond, within American politics, that we're moving something that's a little more sustainable and inclusive. Just to correct on the Fred Hampton, the problem that I also didn't want to go all the way into that kind of level of politics because I understood the reason was he was putting all that power into that one person in a top-down approach. So all they had to do was the FBI took him out, and then it completely faltered.
It's the cult of personality again. Right?
And I think that's why I don't think it is a sustainable way of doing things. I mean, I tried to identify it, but that's why I didn't pursue it all the way because I knew that was dangerous. And also I didn't want to makes me, why am I important? If they gave it to me, I'll be like, maybe. But now I think what Black Lives Matter is much more important. I think that's where we should go to, where there's no central figure. You cannot stamp out, something that's literally have gone in a good way, but nevertheless viral.
And there are great movements in this country.
Yeah.
So you have within the civil rights movement, there are spaces for that. Within feminism, there are spaces for that. There are kind of civil rights movements that are not tied to one figure
and I think that's
one
better.
mission. I think so too. I think they get caricatured afterwards, sort of it's either Dr. King or Malcolm X. It's never quite as stark, but I think this idea that you would have a group that isn't organized around one leader.
Much better that way. It's much more sustainable. I mean, the narcissism in me, it was like, oh, I want to be, I identify with Fred Hampton. I wish I could be like him. Of course we all do. We all want to be that hero of our story.
Yeah.
It was the Kafka. Everyone's a hero, necessarily the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean necessarily.
We're talking about heavy irony too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
doesn't mean it's right, and doesn't mean that's the world I want to live in. But one can dream.
Yeah. No, I mean, Montesquieu says in The Spirit of the Laws that basically that when he imagines the three broad types of governmental systems are, democracy, aristocracy around royalty, around some kind of monarchy, and then despotism. And the reason despotism doesn't work is because the power is all concentrated in one person. So when that person gets taken out, gets taken down, you don't have a system anymore because everything was just predicated on that one.
Exactly.
And you've got one person desperately clinging to whatever power they've managed to accrue, and
power causes brain damage. So over time.
But does he say then it takes a lot of work on behalf of the people to also think for themselves, because you want to outsource your thinking to
no, of course. I mean, and he's not this is a longer conversation, and he's an early 18th century French political philosopher, and he was an aristocrat and kind of believed in a sort of balance of power between a monarch and then an enlightened noble class that had a sense of duty and honor, and the benefits that they got from doing the right thing for the body politic was that it gratified their sense of honor and kind of self-importance. So it's a self-interested model, but selfishly selfless, exactly. Whereas for him, democracy is mob rule, and that's terrifying because you have a bunch of people who aren't qualified to make decisions about how the government should be run.
Occasionally it feels like that.
I know. No, I've increasingly, in the last several years, I've increasingly come around to that. And then despotism is just one person, cult of personality, Tito, building something up entirely based on fear and violence. And the other thing is, if you have a system entirely based on fear and violence, then you too can get violently overthrown, and so it's not a sustainable way of. Sorry. But anyway, what on a totally different note? And I love your name, by the way. But what are your favorite names?
I'm not gonna say Ka-El. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not Nicolas Cage. Names. I think my partner just offered the name Mila. I was like, that's a really nice name. I like unique names.
Pretty.
Names with meaning. My name comes from the Latin word calvis, which means bald. So not my favorite.
Oh, right. Like calvitie is a bald spot.
Yeah. But I think it's a person. I really haven't really thought of a name. I was like, wow, that's a really nice name. Come back to you on that one.
Okay.
Mila, one of Kafka's girlfriends, he had 3 women he fell in love with, was Milena.
Mila short for Milena.
Milena. I always liked the name Milena. I have a niece whose name is Milena, and I thought, that's after Kafka, and they said, what? Nothing to do with Kafka.
One of my favorite students I've ever taught was named Milena.
I like that name.
Maybe let's stick with that one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
What is it that you most dislike?
Entitlement. I hate entitlement. I really just like the idea that one knows better than the other, and that's what we saw last year. This pandemic entitlement that they knew better. And they would make decisions for other people that will be hurtful.
Yeah. What do you mean, like in the pandemic? Because didn't some people need to know better?
Yeah, and the people who need to know better did not act that way, and then they acted in a way they thought they knew better than all the experts and scientists out there. And this is like, well, I don't want to wear a mask because it's a free country, without understanding that action can end up killing some random stranger's grandma. Or let alone somebody's future love of their life, it's just
it is entitlement.
Ripple effect.
The idea, we had a delivery man in Connecticut who actively refused to wear a mask, and he was going to everybody's door every day because everyone was ordering everything on, people were afraid to go to stores, and he actively refused to wear a mask. And I just remember thinking, it felt so arrogant. Like, you're going to go around to people's houses and cough on them and breathe on them, and you feel like you somehow are entitled to do that.
Yeah, it's just this Ubermensch kind of thing where I know better than you. My life is more important than yours. But I think if you can just switch that and say, actually, even what you can be even more selfish is to care about the other person. Yeah. You want to be more selfish. You want to be more Ubermensch than that. Care and invest in the community, because once your turn to get sick, they're going to come to prop you up. Yeah. And what more selfish is that when even when you're down, people are going to be lifting you up. You could be the worst person in the world, but they don't know any better. You took care of them. Yeah. That's very Machiavellian.
Yeah, nice. We see it. What is your greatest regret?
I don't have any. Okay. I feel like everything. I mean, oh shoot, I forgot to do the laundry. Oh no, I left the key in the house. That's it. That's the only thing I was like, and I really think about it. I was like, that's not really. It's not out. The key's not out to get me. Laundry's not out to get me. It's fine.
We don't know that.
My laundry is out to get me.
So
definitely.
Rilke has a really funny line which really stuck in my head. So he says, "There's a rusty nail waiting somewhere, rejoicing at the thought
Yeah.
You will step on it.
Is this
And
the
he
letter to the
invests-
poet?
No,
Lady
That
poet?
sounds like Kafka
He
to
invests
me.
the material world. He said, we don't know whether there's meaning in the
It's
world. There may
rejoicing.
just be meaning. So the key that you left in your house, that key is actually rejoicing at the
healing
time.
it.
It's ruining Calvin.
It's like a little Pixar movie, and they're like, "Why?
It's like he's
I
thinking
ruined
about
his
me
day."
all day. He's thinking
Oh,
about me
yeah.
all day.
I'll
That could be
show
my biggest
him.
regret. I should not have let that key.
The
go
Exactly.
there.
rusty nail rejoicing.
Finally, he misses me.
Oh my
The rusty nail, of course, this is
Yeah.
broken in the next sentence because death is part of life, and we
Yes,
deny
it is.
that. That's
Right.
actually what it is.
Yeah.
This is so
Yeah.
horrible. It really, I really wish I'd never read that letter
I
Uh-huh.
love
because
that.
I always
Love
think there's
that.
a little rusty.
I gotta
nail
go back
waiting-
and open that. I have
waiting
the book in my
waiting somewhere.
Oh
It's
my
so
god,
horrible.
that makes me so happy somehow. I think that
It was meant to be. So you should greet, just like you
Exactly.
greet death as a friend. You should greet that rusty nail. I was like, okay, now it's time to get my tetanus shot updated.
right.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I
There
get to
you
go to
go.
your ER and be
Yeah.
treated like a bar
That's
customer.
If it weren't for the rusty nail, you would have actually gotten tetanus
right.
because you would have let it
Once
expire.
you
And
know.
See?
you went gardening one day and you cut the thing, and then you got. Thank you,
go.
rusty nail.
Thank you, Rusty.
That's
Nail.
my biggest regrets and my biggest friends.
There you go. How would you like to die?
Fulfilled. I like to die fulfilled. I always had this idea that some energy would visit me, God or whatever you believe in. It was going to visit me. Like, did you make the most out of this? And I would be able to say, yeah. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, like read my books. No,
Yeah.
read my blog. I don't even have to answer that because I just know like I lived multiple lifetimes. Well, I mean, what filmmakers? It's a chance to live many lifetimes. Why they have a sense of fulfillment in a different way.
That's an interesting thought because you think they live multiple lifetimes
Yeah.
with each project.
Yeah,
in
the
a way.
story, empathy, and trying to
That's interesting.
I think biographers do.
biographers.
I think writers
Novelists,
in general,
yeah. Writers.
people read a lot. Like my late step grandfather, Victor Ehrlich, who was a professor at Yale, when he was older in his late 80s, I said, what do you do when you can't sleep? He said, oh, there's so many people in my head,
Yeah.
including all the people I read about.
Yeah.
And I really thought this so interesting because he had a lifetime of reading, so he had a lifetime
Yeah.
of stories.
Why can't that be true though? Like, why can't we think that we live in actually a future right now where we are actually reliving with the technology of the future,
Right.
certain different lifetimes? We're inhabiting things. I've uploaded our memories to some memory bank, and here we are. Boom. We're doing this podcast because to 50 years from now we decide let's do a podcast.
Let's do a podcast.
In 2021. All right.
What is your motto?
Depends on the situation.
Is that the motto?
Yeah, actually. You know what? Actually,
That's a good one.
how I've gotten out of every situation is it depends. So many people ask me questions on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, I know how I get in trouble with this one, and I have to say because honestly, it is the truth. It depends. Oh, should I do this or should I do that? It's like, if I'm wrong, they're dead. And I was like, well, it depends. Are you like going?
Should I cross the border here
Right.
at this
Yeah,
spot?
do you have this risk tolerance? Do you have what depends on your passport? It depends on
Tetanus shot.
tetanus shot. There's so many variables. I can't answer that for you, which is the truth.
Yeah, that's one of
And
them.
my motto is it depends because the life is
That's
very
a great
dependable.
one.
Oh, okay. So this is the one question we've added to the questionnaire, which is, who would you most like to hear answer these questions? And ideally, it would be somebody alive. I mean, there are lots of great answers for, we'd like to hear Gandhi do this,
Right,
but like
right.
somebody who's alive, and maybe we could actually approach and ask them because we're always looking for other
Yeah.
great people to interview.
Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, AOC
AOC.
would be great. I think
Oh, she would be great.
because I think she does so much work.
Yeah.
She generally believes when she does she have time to step back and actually think about the meaning behind her work?
Yeah.
When she does.
That's a good question.
She'd be a
I worry.
great person.
Be
She'd be good
interesting.
because I worry that she's just one step, the next step, the next step. I know she was a bartender. A bartender knows another bartender. It all about is just
Mhm.
getting to the next thing, to the next thing, to the show, and then
Mhm.
by the time it's 4:00 in the morning, it's closing. Well, that was it.
Right.
And you don't really think about like, wow, I'm making all these customers happy. I realized it when I was a DJing. There was moments I could stop in the middle of songs and like, this is really nice. I never felt that fulfillment as a bartender until it was already too late.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the time.
AOC would be great fun.
Yeah.
So Calvin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
for having me.
Yes,
This
we
was
loved
fun.
having you.
This is great.
So we want to remind our listeners it's Monsoon Diaries on Instagram, and there's a really big website. You create a community of travelers. People can sign up, go on a trip with you.
Yep.
Right,
Anytime.
that's awesome. The trips look incredible.
Thank you.
We look forward to if and when the book comes out. Caroline is Caroline Weber 2020 on Instagram for listeners.
Mhm.
Proust Questionnaire, we're also on Instagram, where you can find us anywhere, and we have a website, and we'll put notes, including how to get a cheap ticket to Hong Kong, onto the
Portugal.
website for the podcast.
An appendix.
An appendix, exactly. But also thanks for being here after a really difficult year.
Thank you.
And I have to say, spending this hour, I'm totally inspired.
Me too.
Really, it's like so much energy. You just have energy to give. And if I ever have to go to the ER, I'm knocking on wood. I hope you'll be the bartender.
I know.
Yeah, you
I'm
come in
happy
the ER
that
to give us food or something, not
Yeah.
give us a patient.
We
Exactly.
bring snacks.
Right.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you
We
so
loved
much.
talking to you.
Pleasure.